All right, hey, this is Mr. Oliver here with another discussion about the Protestant Reformation. I hope you're all excited to hear about it because we already talked about our buddy Marty Luther and Johnny Calvin, but what was going on elsewhere? Well, prior to the last lecture, and I think McKay talks about this over in chapter 12, John Wycliff had translated the Bible into English. Now, this was not what the Catholic Church thought was a great idea. They were not big fans of it. But he did it, and he actually encouraged his followers, and John Wycliffe, along with William Tyndale, or Tyndale, I've heard it pronounced both ways, sent out lay preachers that were called followers of, or speakers of Lolly. And of course, as everyone knows, Lolly means like nonsense. So there's Johnny Wycliffe right there. Just call him John Wycliffe. And there's Tyndale sending the Lollards on their way. And they would go out and they would preach the gospel, which most people had not heard directly before. They were not that familiar with it. Why do I mention this? Because it shows England had a history of discussing church issues. They already had a history of challenging the Catholic Church. So we flash forward to this hunk of meat over here, Henry VIII. Now, Henry VIII had been loyal to the Catholic Church. This doesn't make any sense if you think about the rest of it. If you know the rest of the story, you'll be like, seriously, why? But he was such a well-respected dude that the Pope was like, you know what? Bro, you are the defender of the Catholic faith. And here he's like, bro, you think so? And Pope was like, yes, I do. So he had been totally loyal. Now, a little note here. This here is, this above me, is Henry VIII in modern popular culture. Okay? That is a good-looking man. Real life Henry let himself go a little bit. This is the real life thing. So just keep in mind that Henry is not quite the same looking guy. In fact, anytime anyone tells you that someone in the past was good looking, check them. Just be like, seriously? Because hygiene was so miserable by our today's standards that they're not going to look like homey. Okay? They're going to look like homely. What? Anyway, Henry VIII had a problem, and that is that his boo, right here, that's Catherine of Aragon, he and his bae could not produce a male heir. They'd been married for a while. All they had was this little ginger child over here, Mary Tudor, and she is obviously a lady child. And Henry's like, this isn't working out for me. Because, of course, you blame the woman, right? This is not scientifically accurate, but that's what Henry VIII did, because Henry VIII, he's full of himself. So he says, look, Pope, I'm going to need a divorce. The Pope's like, why? It's like, my wife is not giving me a male baby. She's only giving me these lady babies. And only one lived anyway, and it's Mary Tudor. Because that's kind of a sad thing. I don't mean to make light of it, but that's what it was. So Pope says, no, I cannot do that. Henry's like, what? Do I need to mention this? Okay, look, I had to get special permission to even marry Catherine of Aragon. Pope said, well, just because I forgot to say it. Pope said, you mean Catherine of Aragon, who is the daughter of Ferdinand and Isabella from chapter 13 in the book? And they also show up in chapter 15, sending Christopher Columbus on his way in 1492. And Henry VIII is like the same. And Pope is like, well, what do you mean you had to get special permission? Even though he already knew it, it's just for the purposes of the story. And Henry's like, she's my brother's widow. Your brother's little what? No, widow. Bro died. I always had a little crush on Kathy, and I'm like, girl, and she was like, I was like, girl, and she was like, and I finally was like, girl, let's put a ring on it. So I guess she knew I liked it because I put a ring on it. Whoa. And the Pope's like, okay, so you married your brother's widow. Okay, so what's the big? And Henry's like, wait a second. Remember how I had to get special permission because the book of Leviticus says I can't marry my brother's widow? Bukasha. Annulment. The Pope's like, annulments are like for short marriages. You've been married for like 13 years, bro. And Henry's like, well, what am I supposed to do here? Now, stepping aside for a minute, think about all the stuff we talked about in the rest of chapter 14 with Martin Luther and all that. The Pope had his hands full at this point. Henry is making a not for the time period, although it is sexist, demand, or a not outrageous demand. So the Pope is like, well, yeah, it's not outrageous, but I can't say yes, because if I do so, then I admit that the previous Pope shouldn't have granted you the marriage in the first place, and, there's that whole infallibility thing. Plus, it gives Luther more ammunition to be saying, can't trust the Catholic Church, they're corrupt, they're always giving special privileges to their friends. And Henry's like, but you did give me a special privilege. And he's like, dude, it's not the point. I can't. There's this other issue because Catherine's nephew, who happens to be Charles V, right now he's occupying Rome, and he's got me in kind of a compromising position to the point of, if I were to grant you a divorce to his aunt, he might murder me. Henry's like, whoa, can we do? So Henry basically decides the Pope's not going to help him. So he decides he's got to take matters into his own hands. What's he going to do? Start his own religion, obviously. Scary, right? He starts his own religion. It's exactly the same as the Catholic religion, initially. But it has a rule that says the king can get a divorce. So, homie started his own church to get out of his relationship. And you say, well, that's a little extreme. Yes, it is. It is a little extreme. So he divorces his wife, divorces Catherine of Aragon, who goes on to devote her life to religion, starts his own church. It is called the Anglican Church, a.k.a. the Church of England. Well, that's unnecessary, quite frankly. And ends up getting married again to a woman named Anne Boleyn. Forces people to swear submission to him. Now, this is because he is the king and also the head of the church. Okay? And he wants the priest to say, look, we support you. Right? And the priests are often like, well, you want us to put aside years and years of our heartfelt devotion because you wanted to get a divorce? And he's like, yeah. Okay, that's enough. That's enough of that. And some priests are like, nope. And they go off and they start this thing called the Pilgrimage of Grace, where they march across the countryside along with other loyal Catholics, protesting the king's decision here. Some of them don't even blame the king for it. They say it's his advisors. They're the bad ones. Okay, stop. Anyway, Henry is now the head of the church, Anglican, aka Church of England. It is a Protestant religion by default because it is non-Catholic, and the priests that remain are now Anglican priests. He decides to sweeten the deal for some of the nobles by getting rid of the monasteries and other church lands and giving them to his nobles that maybe need a little bit of persuasion. Then he makes it the national religion of England, his new church, the Church of England. I mean, as far as ways to get out of a relationship go, it's better than texting, but I can't say that it's really the most practical. So there's Anne Boleyn there. So he marries Anne Boleyn, and Anne is somebody he has had his eye on previously. I mean, I can't say anything for sure, but she did give birth less than 9 months after they got married. So there might be something to the fact that maybe they knew each other ahead of time in some way or another. She also gives him a child, but it's another lady baby. The one that will go on to be Elizabeth the First. Unfortunately for Anne, she is not the most loyal to Henry. Disputes or different accounts say different things. What we know is he accused her of incest with her brother. That's probably not true. It's gross. I mean, you're like, yeah, that's what everybody did. That's why they're like, oh, yeah. So he's like, you know what? I'm going to chop her head off. And everybody's like, yeah, it's a good move, Henry. Yeah, yeah. So he gets rid of Anne Boleyn. He thinks, man, what is up with all of these women giving me lady baby children? Thank you, Horrible Histories. And he finally decides, you know what I need in a wife? I need one that's...
It needs to be about 20% cooler.
Yeah, one that's about 20% cooler. So he ends up with Jane Seymour. Now, that's not Jane Seymour right there, obviously. This is the third wife, Jane Seymour's progeny. This is his son. Jane Seymour was the love of his life. He loves her, and of course she dies in childbirth. It's very tragic. He has lost his true love. He has his male child finally, but at what cost? Actually, this is Henry. He's just going to move on and marry again. But he does get a little boy, and he promptly dresses him like this, which, you know what, you finally get your boy. Maybe dress him, yeah, not like, he looks like he might be like maybe a plum or something. He looks like he's got a little stem coming out of his head. It's not good. So, real quickly, I don't want to spend too much time on the rest of his wives. Of course, we had the first one, that is Catherine of Aragon. She is divorced. Anne Boleyn, she is the one he accused her of having affairs. She is beheaded. Jane Seymour, the one who gave him Edward, she died in childbirth. Remember, Catherine of Aragon gave him Mary Tudor. That's his last name, of course. Anne Boleyn gave him Elizabeth. He had declared both of those illegitimate children, but once Jane Seymour gave him Edward, he re-legitimized his two children prior to this and put the succession order as Edward first, and then Mary, and then Liz. But he's like, what could possibly happen? I mean, obviously Edward's going to be the next king. I can rest now. Remarries, supposedly falls in love with a portrait of Anne of Cleves, meets her, says that she resembles a horse, so he divorces her. Catherine Howard, she is young. He marries her. He's warm for her form, but she gets into relationships with other men, if you know what I mean. It wasn't that subtle, actually. She has affairs, or at least he accuses her of that, and so she is also beheaded. Catherine Parr is his last wife, his sixth wife, and he would probably have killed her, but he ended up dying first, so survived, yeah. Now, the whole time I'm talking about this, I would be remiss if I did not make reference to the wonderful Horrible History series from the BBC. Do yourself a favor, YouTube some of these. The one above me there is the Henry VIII Six Sorry Wives song, which it's impossible to talk about his six wives now without me singing that song in my head. But really, do yourself a favor, give them some money. You can buy all the episodes on YouTube. I believe the Henry VIII song is in Season 1, Episode 2. So, it's $2, but really, it really helps to remember some of this stuff. There's a reason European kids know a lot about history. I mean, yes, they live there, but they have awesome educational TV shows. Anyway, that was a plug for no reason. I just like it. So, after Henry VIII dies, his son does not rule for very long. I know, right? After all that trouble, he gets a son, and then he doesn't rule for a long time. Sadly, history has no sense of drama sometimes. It leaves us a little anticlimactic. But it's okay, because we're going to get some drama here. And that is that his first daughter, and remember, this is a daughter from Catherine of Aragon. They were Catholic. Henry divorced and disgraced her mother and then disowned her. So Mary Tudor, when she takes the Queen office, says, look, we are not Protestants anymore. All this Church of England nonsense it's done. Okay? And some people are like, but Mary, we kind of like the Church of England thing, because there are certain advantages of being in the Catholic Church, or out of the Catholic Church. Like we don't have to pay the tithe to the church, and etc. and so on. And she's like, oh yeah. What should I do about the people who want to be Protestant still? Oh, I got an idea.
I will look for you. I will find you. And I will kill you.
Yeah, that'll do it. She doesn't treat them well. And she gets a nickname Bloody Mary. You might have heard of her. Because she is kind of a notorious figure in the history. She is not really a ghost. This is more of something that Protestant children would be told by their mothers if they weren't following orders. You know, you better be good or else Bloody Mary's... Oh, they're British. You better be good or else Bloody Mary's going to get you rotten. All right, Gov, you got to brush your teeth then. Make sure you get the gums. It's definitely something that the average Protestant would have said in the 17th century. Unlikely, actually, but Anyway, her reign is fairly short-lived, although notorious in history, and she dies. Now, she did have a husband, and that would be Philip II, who we will discuss in a little bit in the next lecture. But she's dead again, so we end up with her sis. Third in the succession order, we had Edward, he died, who ruled as Edward VI, actually. Mary, who rules as Mary I, and now we have Elizabeth. Don't make the mistake of insulting the current Queen of England, at least current as of this recording, by saying, like, is that the same one still in charge? Keep in mind, we're talking about the late 1500s here. Elizabeth I dies in 1603. Just doing the basic math there, the current queen is not young, but she's not like 300 and some odd years old, okay? So, Elizabeth has an idea. She says, look, I'm going to take us back to being Protestant. I'm the daughter of Anne Boleyn. You know, I was the fruit of this marriage where Henry started his own thing, so, okay. Started his own church. I want us to be Protestant. But I also don't want to be like sis and go around killing people who don't agree with me. So I'm going to do this thing called the Elizabethan Settlement. I'm going to encourage outward conformity. That is to say, privately, do what you want. But publicly, you're a Protestant. Okay, your Church of England, publicly. In your home, you want to, have a rosary or whatnot, be a little Catholic, all good. No worries. Elizabeth is great. There's a lot of reasons for this. One, this statement here, the Elizabethan Settlement, kind of marks her as what Mackay and many other historians have called a politique, where she's willing to put politics above religion. She's not going to make decisions exclusively for the purpose of advancing her own faith. She is instead making decisions for the purpose of harmony, making sure politically it is a smoother transition. But also, she's going to end up defeating the Spanish king, Philip II, in war. That will be 1588, the Spanish Armada. She's a strong, sassy, and intelligent woman. The worst thing about her is also one of the things that makes her awesome. She doesn't find a suitable match as far as somebody who it would be socially acceptable for her marry that would still let her be in the driver's seat as far as running the country goes, because she knows she's good. So she declares herself to be married to her country. She is sometimes known as the Virgin Queen. Spoilers, this is a bit of an exaggeration. She just didn't get married. If you don't know what that means, never mind. Stay pure. Anyway, so she's strong and intelligent, married to her country, and she leaves no heirs. That will be a problem when we get to chapter 16, because the people who take over after her are no longer Tudors. They are now Stuarts, her cousins from Scotland, and they will be problematic in their own way. I'm going to stop here before we get to religious warfare. Alright, so anyway, we're going to stop there for now. I hope you enjoyed hearing about Elizabeth, and before her Mary, and before her Henry VIII. Tutors, if you have any questions, always feel free to email me, charles.oliver@fresnounified.org, or you can tweet me. I believe I'm Bullard Oliver on the Twitter, and I believe I am Oliver Euro on the Tumblr. You can ask a question on the Tumblr. We cannot get to the Tumblr in our school district anymore, so I have to check it at home, because they classified it as an adult site, which is a different issue. But Twitter works pretty well, so you can just tweet me and be like, I didn't understand what you said about this, or I disagree with the way you portrayed this, or whatever. And we'll talk. All right? Have a nice day. Bye-bye.